back to the 2021 IGES mid-year briefing. For those that I've not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Maria Cardiellos and I'm the Executive Director of the IGES Institute. If you were able to join us yesterday, I think that you saw and experienced the fact that our first day hopefully provided you with a lot of great information from a lot of disparate practitioners, experts, and service providers. To give you a little bit of the highlights for those that weren't able to join us, we were honored with the first keynote being Roy Austin, who is the Vice President for Civil Rights at Facebook. We had senior representatives from several different domains speaking to their experiences within the courts domain and within law enforcement, representing 3 states and decades of experience between them. We had a panel on officer wellness, which we quickly netted out to be practitioner wellness, because the concerns, the stresses, the challenges that officers or responders feel is so intrinsic in so many of our lives, given the challenges of late. We heard voices and opinions from NCJA, from National Council on State Legislators, as well as representatives from the National Governors Association. We had updates from NEAM, for those of us that have been part of providing data support services to the public sector for decades. National Information Exchange Model has actually grown and brought in several different domains over the recent years. And we heard updates on their accomplishments. And we also heard from new technologies that are out there to slice and dice the data. So data is where the focus of yesterday's session not only began, but concluded. We came up with several different resounding themes throughout the day, all in support of justice reform, regardless of one's perspective or definition of justice reform. We are all well aware that those of us that have been in the business for decades are seeking only to improve the operational outcomes for all the different practitioners. You know, we speak within the law enforcement sectors of 18,000 different agencies nationwide. If we were try to quantify the number of agencies that fill the spectrum of domains within the justice community, I'm not even sure that the numbers could go high enough for us to quantify. When we speak to the federal, the state, the county, the local, the private, the nonprofits, all of those that truly provide services, the impact is huge, and the ability to affect change or reform to speak to that broader justice community is massive. It's almost unthinkable that we can come up with what are solutions and themes that actually can affect some positive change, but I truly believe that we did. Yesterday, we focused on what were the needs, the constant needs for training and education. Regardless of what the topic may be, regardless of the communication venue, regardless of the efforts that are spent on educating our stakeholders, the different passages of time, the different practitioners that move from one organization to another, the different switches of administration at all the different levels of government, necessitate and warrant that we continue to educate not only the public sector, but the private sector and our communities on how our system operates. And I use the term system loosely, but how our operation manages its individuals day to day, and how we can collectively improve that model. We also saw that policy was something that was intrinsic from start to finish. It's not only the legislative policy that may be at the federal, state, and local levels. It's the privacy policies that are intrinsic to all of us. It's even the technical policies that from a solution provider perspective, we need to be respectful of. The last, what I refer to as soft objective and soft focus, is that of change management and cultural shift. Much of what is this cry or outcry for justice reform is a reaction to what has been maybe decades of the need for change, not necessarily having the financial wherewithal to make the changes that we all wanted to affect. This is not a political issue. This is about where do our priorities need to be? And at this moment, we may have the opportunity to affect some very positive change within the justice world. The core results of yesterday, as I made reference to, come back to the value and the critical success components related to data and to partnership. Data from the perspective that no practitioner, no policymaker, no executive leader from any organization can make intelligent choices unless he or she have the available data to them so that they can slice and dice it and interpret the realities that come from that. The other thing that is starkly obvious is that we cannot do this in a vacuum. We can be anyone that's speaking out loud. We can be practitioners, we can be private sector, we can be from all those different facets of the domains. But we must do this as a collection of resources with, if not a single voice, at least a community voice. You'll never get two individuals to be a mirror reflection of one another's thoughts, but I do feel that not only from yesterday's activities and discussions, but most importantly from the history with IJIS and our partner communities, we can come together on our priorities and we can affect change. So to that end, I would expect, we all expect that today's great selection of speakers, of panels will no doubt reiterate those concepts, but we look forward to the education that it will provide us with. We start off with a great keynote speaker, senior advisor from DOJ, OJP, Phelan, Wyrick. We continue with what our voices from the practitioner community. As I mentioned yesterday, we had corrections and courts. We had law enforcement in courts. Today we have corrections, parole, and probation. We continue the day with a discussion from Senator Camera Bartolotta from the state of Pennsylvania. She will chat with us with regard to what the state is doing from a policy perspective and from a program perspective, not only short-term, but long-term. She'll share with us her challenges or their challenges that they've experienced and what their priorities are. We'll continue with what is a presentation on analytics. As we had one of our member companies speak to a case study on officer or practitioner wellness yesterday, today we're going to have a panel and members speak to what is analytics across the domain. Again, focusing on data, but what tools, what services, what policy issues, what programmatic issues come up, good, bad, and indifferent, that then were faced and came to some positive resolution. We'll have another set of practitioner voices that come from partner agencies to speak to IACP, National Center on State Courts, APPA, and Ben Bawden from Bawden, Brooks, and Moore, a group that we have all come to know as a family member. Again, all will speak to what their practitioners are feeling, seeing, and experiencing, and all speaking to how perhaps better we can prioritize the needs that we can collectively focus on. Lastly, we'll have a couple of committee updates on what are IJIS efforts. One that speaks to person-centric data model, where we have referred to NEAM data models, where we have referred to different technologies. This is about being able to track the individual across the disparate systems and or applications that are available to us within the justice domain, so that we truly can look at one individual and see where he or she may have started and through to where they are being supervised at the end of their stay, or hopefully the end of their stint with the justice community. We will also have an update from individuals both on the public and private sector side that will speak to us about a crime modernization effort. And for those that are familiar with the National Academy of Sciences report on crime modernization, it is one that is truly fundamental to how we will address not only data collection in the future, but how we arrive at some sort of common understanding and common focus of legislation across data access and access of state data across the paradigm. So it's truly one that is interesting and in depth. with all that in mind, we continue on what will be our agenda today. As I made reference to before, we have the honor and privilege of having Senior Advisor from OJP DOJ, Phelan Wyrick, with us. He is one that not only will be able to share the administration's priorities as it relates to justice reform, but hopefully share what are the goals and objectives that they are looking to enact. We understand that there is a burdensome, thick, heavy, very detailed process that goes through when an administration transitions in. We understand that there are priorities, and then we understand that there are outcomes X amount of months later. So we are now in the early part of that administration, and we're looking forward to what the goals and objectives are, and if there is the intention to have any sort of guidelines or frameworks that might be available to help the public sector and the private sector realize those goals and objectives. To give you a little bit of background on Phelan's specific background, he has had more than 23 years experience within the Department of Justice specifically. He has led efforts that are related to research and evidence-based practices. And that speaks not only within OJJDP, NIJ, and OJP. He has served most recently as the director of NIJ's Research and an Evaluation Division. That was a position that he enjoyed and that had his leadership between the years of 2014 and 21. I can give you his litany on awards and accolades, but that would take too much time, and it's better that you hear him speak and share his wisdom than me speak of his background. What I think is very unique about Phelan is not only his mastery of the justice system and the operational priorities that are apparent on a day-to-day basis to practitioners out there, but I think his research background, his evidence-based practice background focuses and brings us back to the understanding of data. And for any of those that have been in this business more than a couple of days, we're always amazed at the fact that practitioners will come to a resolution, will define policies, will even codify policies before they bring those individuals, those CIOs, those practitioners that deal with data collection, data systems, data availability to the table to discuss what is even possible and whether it is something that is easily done. So I think Phelan, of all the individuals that we were able to bring to the table, truly understands all of those issues. It's not about a technical issue. It's just understanding that in order to make wise decisions, you need to have data available to you to make those choices. So Phelan, without further ado, I thank you so much for spending some time with the IJS community, and I pass the virtual gauntlet to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. You know, hearing your opening remarks today really reminded me of the last time I had a chance to speak with the folks at IJS, and my memory goes back, I believe it was 2010, and we were talking about integrating evidence and evidence-based approaches into criminal justice practice. And I know that work is really still ongoing, and there's so much we're still doing in that space, but also I know that the people at IJS and the people in the audience here today have done so much to advance this work. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I bring greetings from the Office of Justice Programs and the Acting Assistant Attorney General, Amy Solomon, who is very much with us today in spirit. And I'm honored to be able to bring her message and the administration's message about the priorities and the administration's strategy for justice reform. In setting these priorities and strategies, the Biden administration is recognizing and supporting justice professionals, policymakers, stakeholders, and community members in jurisdictions of all sizes across the nation who are taking a fresh look at our approaches for preventing and reducing crime. We know that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but we also see that there's a wide range of cross-cutting issues that must be addressed to improve and reform justice. There's so much that we can and must do, big and small at all levels, to bring about these changes. So again, it's my pleasure to be able to talk with you today about some of these ideas. Under the leadership of President Biden and Attorney General Garland, the Justice Department has renewed its commitment to civil rights and access to justice. The department is also strengthening its commitment to community violence intervention and to supporting victims and to building trust between law enforcement and the community. And as you know, the Office of Justice Programs plays a central role in these efforts. The proof of the administration's commitment to these priorities lies in the specific designations in OJP's budget, which lay out how we hope to accomplish these goals. The President's budget request for fiscal year 2022 includes first step investments in this administration's goals, objectives, strategy, and overall view of the challenges that face us as part of justice reform. The administration has requested $5.8 billion to support OJP's priorities, which fall into 7 major categories. These categories are promoting criminal and juvenile justice system reform and enhancing civil rights, preventing and reducing gun violence, combating sexual assault, supporting effective reentry, addressing substance use disorders through diversion and treatment, supporting victims of crime, and advancing criminal justice research. Now, I'd like to highlight some of our priority programs which promote these reforms across the full spectrum of the criminal justice system, and specifically to reduce incarceration rates, promote equitable justice, and support youth at the front end of our system. So let's begin with criminal and juvenile justice system reform. We've asked for $35 million for the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. As many of you know, the purpose of JRI is to help state and local justice stakeholders develop, implement, and test innovative research-based responses to criminal justice system problems. This has been very successful. A number of jurisdictions have been able to reduce corrections populations and recidivism while freeing up resources for proven public safety strategies. I imagine that every jurisdiction would like to reduce corrections populations and recidivism so that they could move resources towards the front end of crime prevention efforts, but it's not easily done. But JRI has succeeded, and the administration wants to expand on that success. Our budget includes programs that will help ensure fair access to justice and legal representation, programs that will improve community trust in the criminal justice system, including the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program, which supports localized, community-oriented strategies and body-worn camera programs. Of course, an equitable system of justice depends on an effective system of justice. The budget requests over $513 million for the Justice Assistance Grants Program, which is the primary source of flexible funding for state, local, and tribal jurisdictions across all components of the criminal justice system. The Byrne JAG request also includes funding to support training, both to improve law enforcement responses and to prevent actions that contribute to racial and economic disparities in the justice system. It also includes funding to encourage law enforcement and prosecutors to build evidence-based, data-driven tactics and strategies that are effective, efficient, and economical. We look to educate and train the next generation of juvenile and criminal justice leaders and broaden their understanding of criminal justice systems and restorative approaches. The budget also requests $10 million to support agencies responding to public safety emergencies that threaten to overwhelm their own resources. There are funds to support investigation and prosecution of cold case murders associated with civil rights violations. And there's also money for hate crimes prevention training program, which is just one component of the department's broader commitment to deter hate crimes and bias-related incidents, address those incidents when they occur, support those victimized by hate crimes, and reduce the pernicious effects of these incidents that these incidents have on our society. With respect to juvenile justice system reform, the administration is committed to give children and youth involved with the justice system a chance to live up to their potential. The budget requests $796 million for juvenile justice programs, which more than doubles existing funding. The budget proposes investments in programs that will provide effective alternatives to incarceration for youth and support evidence-based prevention and intervention strategies for juvenile justice system involved youth. For example, we propose to spend $100 million for community-based alternatives to youth incarceration. This is a new program that will offer incentives to states, localities, and tribes that introduce reforms designed to reduce youth incarceration, like mentorship, counseling, and jobs. This includes $15 million for a Girls in the Justice System program that supports comprehensive community-based prevention and early intervention for girls involved or at risk of becoming involved in the juvenile justice system. So let's talk a little bit about preventing and reducing gun violence. For all these initiatives to be successful, our communities need to be safe. Almost 40,000 people die as a result of firearm injuries in the United States every year. And homicide is the third leading cause of death for people ages 10 through 24. And for Black males under 45, homicide is the leading cause of death. As the Attorney General recently said in announcing the department's violent crime strategy, we are renewing our commitment to reducing violent crime and building strong communities where all Americans are safe. We've asked for $100 million for a new community violence intervention initiative that will support local efforts to interrupt and prevent violence through promising and effective street outreach strategies. These are community-driven strategies that don't necessarily rely on law enforcement. Although law enforcement is certainly part of the larger effort to advance community violence interventions, these are often driven by community-based organizations. And these funds will support community-based organizations that are working on the front lines to keep their neighborhoods safe, working closely and in an authentic way with community members themselves. In addition, the administration requested $100 million for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for a complementary community violence intervention initiative. In fact, the administration's proposed investments in community violence intervention through the American Jobs Plan will extend beyond the Department of Justice and the CDC to include historic investments and changes to federal funding streams across 26 programs in the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, Education, Housing and Urban Development, and Labor. The White House is leading the collaboration and the interagency work between all of these departments to advance this initiative, and we're proud to have an important role to play at the Office of Justice Programs. There's also $40 million for a program to incentivize and promote the adoption of gun licensing laws that could restrict access to firearms by individuals who pose a threat to themselves or others. And the budget requests $89 million to improve the quality, timeliness, and accessibility of criminal history records and related information. Improvements in the background check systems can help keep guns out of the wrong hands and reduce delays for law-abiding gun purchasers. And then there's Project Safe Neighborhoods, or PSN. As many of you know, the department's violent crime strategy enhances PSN by directing all U.S. attorneys to update their PSN programs to be aligned with the department's guiding principles to improve community engagement, build trust, develop strategic enforcement plans in coordination with state, local, and tribal law enforcement partners, and measure the effectiveness of these collective efforts to reduce violence. One part of violent crime, of course, is sexual assault. Community violence includes sexual assault, and sexual assault survivors need to feel confident that when they report an attack, they will be taken seriously and the crime will be investigated thoroughly. OJP supports a multidisciplinary approach around supporting survivors, improving the law enforcement response, and improving training for law enforcement and other justice system personnel. We've asked for $100 million for the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, SAKI. SAKI allows grantees to inventory their unsubmitted sexual assault kits, then test those kits and pursue leads. There's also a victim support component, and we've requested $20 million for a new program for training to improve the investigation of and response to sexual assault cases. Another important priority, of course, is supporting effective reentry. We must rethink and reduce the scale of incarceration as a justice system response. Front-end supports that keep people out of the justice system in the first place are essential to this goal. It is also vital that we improve how people are treated while they're incarcerated and give them better access to healthcare, education, jobs, and housing during incarceration and upon their release. The administration's budget includes increased support for the Second Chance Act programs. The goal here, of course, is to help people returning from prison and jail reintegrate and be equipped to fully participate in their communities after release. The budget also continues to support grants that foster positive family engagement between incarcerated parents and their children. It's imperative that we continue to develop our body of knowledge and evidence to help us understand which programs are most effective in achieving the many goals we have as it relates to reentry. Relatedly, we have to be addressing substance use disorders through diversion and treatment. Too many of our citizens have succumbed to drug overdoses in recent years. The administration proposes increased support for all of our people, totaling $418 million for diversion, substance use disorder treatment, and connections to mental health services. The opioid crisis has hit this country in a huge way. This request includes funding for OJP's comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse program, or COSAP. COSAP's goal is to reduce overdose-related deaths and provide substance use disorder treatment, reentry services, and alternatives to incarceration for people who are addicted to opioids and stimulants. Those of you who know OJP well know that the Office for Victims of Crime is a central piece of our organization and provides critical services. When our people become victims of crime, whether or not they see their perpetrators brought to justice, they need help beyond the justice system to recover. The Crime Victims Fund remains an essential funding source, and the budget requests $2.65 billion. Our budget would continue the up to 5% set aside from the Crime Victims Fund for tribal victim assistance. We're also looking to expand access to services for all victims. We know that some victim populations have had more difficulty accessing these victim services and funds. This budget supports outreach to these underserved communities through discretionary programs like our recent solicitation from the Office for Victims of Crime to create a national center for culturally responsive victim services. We're also providing technical assistance resources to state formula grantees to help them identify and serve underserved populations. The budget requests $50 million for a new victim advocate program that will provide grants to localities to train and hire victim advocates and support their professional development. These victim advocates will help to provide outreach and connect those underserved populations to the services that they need and deserve. Finally, I want to talk about advancing criminal justice research, one of my favorite topics. We firmly believe that sound strategies rest on strong science. The administration is committed to improving our knowledge and understanding of crime and justice issues through research and scientific innovation. The budget includes $143 million for research, evaluation, and statistics, which will greatly inform our policy and program work at OJP and around the country. This work is what I've been most involved in for the last 6 years at the National Institute of Justice. It's a terrific opportunity for us to work across all of our OJP components and for you to engage across your various stakeholders and disciplines to think about how to integrate research into the work that you're doing in large ways and in small ways, how to better understand the outcomes and the effectiveness of the work you're doing. I'll point out that within the total amount that we're putting towards research, evaluation, and statistics, the budget includes $10 million to support research related to prevention and intervention strategies related to domestic terrorism. One more important note on policy priorities. Acting AAG, Acting Assistant Attorney General, Amy Solomon, plans to leverage OJP's resources and the megaphone that we have wherever possible to take on the problem of systemic racism in the justice system. President Biden has said that advancing equity and equal opportunity is the responsibility of the whole of our government. OJP has a significant responsibility when it comes to addressing racial justice and long-standing disparities and inequities. We can't accomplish these goals without stakeholder engagement. The people in this audience who are hearing me now, the members of IJIS, you understand how to work across disciplinary boundaries to tackle a wide range of issues and challenges that face our field. You know how to define requirements and design and implement solutions that can be models for future use nationally. You work at all levels, local, state, regional, and national, to advance justice and make our systems work better, to make tomorrow a more safe and just world than it is today. You are vital to the success of this administration's justice reform goals. So please join us in reaching out to your broader community and stakeholders to support the success of the administration's priorities. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to talk about the Biden administration's hopes and concrete plans for a future in which we improve the nation's capacity to prevent and reduce crime, advance racial equity in the administration of justice, help victims heal, and enhance the rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Phelan. We could not be more appreciative of your of your sharing time with us, of your defining and sharing the priorities of this administration, of giving us lots of food for thought on where we could interject. I love the methodology speak. I love the tech speak. I love the understanding of how we can, as a community, transcend not only the levels of practitioners, but across the domains. We as a community have done that collectively, and frankly, we have done that successfully only when we fully engage public sector representatives like yourself. So we look forward to those opportunities in the future. It's with your voices, your vision, and what I'd like to believe is our collective expertise that we could affect change and positive outcomes. So I know you don't have a lot of time to spend with us. I know that there are questions coming in and accolades coming in on the chat room, but I certainly will hope to work with you in the future, reach out to you in the future, and maybe even set up another session later this year to be able to address audience concerns and speak to us about a status update in the future.
Thank you so much, Maria. There's more to come, and I really just echo and want to reiterate what I said about how valuable the work of, you know, all the people who you work with. This work is so valuable, and it's important within the justice field to keep ringing that bell about, you know, the importance of data, the importance of evidence and science, and really making sure that we're thinking about how we can be as effective and efficient as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And for all the participants, we are going to break now, and I would ask you to return no later than 11:15, where we have a couple more representatives from the public sector that will represent the corrections group and the parole and probation. Two not only friends of IJIS, family members, but truly experts in the field that will be able to share their experiences and the priorities of their individual domain. So thank you all, and we will chat with you shortly.